Hi everyone, welcome back to the weekly politics show. I'm Councillor Premier with co-host Councillor Andrew Wood, and we're joined by a guest, Harry Scoffin, and we're discussing the fire at Providence Wharf. Now, we've discussed up to the fire and the issues around it and how we can learn lessons from it, but it seems like the aftercare provided to the victims of the fire needs a lot to be desired. First, I'll go to Harry. Harry, do you want to just give a brief description of how badly people feel they've been treated after the fire in terms of aftercare? And then Andrew, I know you've made comments on that as well. So Harry, over to you.
Andrew was making the point about there's so many different moving parts in this situation and so many different players and everyone's supposed to be taking responsibility, and then there's going to be blame shifting inevitably anyway. But one of the things that's coming through from speaking to the residents is that they feel there's been a lack of communication and transparency. And this is, I don't know whether this has made the media yet, but it's something that's almost farcical. But basically they were put up at Madison, so nearby hotel. Actually, I think it's on their development. And they only found out on Sunday that it was actually a COVID quarantining venue. And basically Ballymore, and again, this is just what I've heard speaking to the residents and some people on the RA, Ballymore basically have claimed that Tower Hamlets Council were the ones that knew about this, and Ballymore weren't aware of that arrangement. And obviously they were there on the Friday, but then they were carted out on Friday night to another hotel. But the point is that the residents had to find out about that by asking the security guards themselves. And the point is that it's quite bad because obviously people have had the trauma of the fire, but obviously with the Chinese community, Hong Kongers that have flats there, some of them find it actually more offensive and more worrying than the actual near miss fire. Actually, the idea that, and some of them are even getting notifications on their NHS mobile app saying self-isolate. So you've got one near fire that could have been even worse, and now you're having to fend off a virus potentially.
Andrew, I know you've made a few statements as well. My understanding is Tower Hamlets Council is ultimately responsible for this, so this will come under something called the Civil Contingencies Act, and that is when there's sort of like an emergency, say COVID or a natural disaster or a fire. Tower Hamlets Council has a duty to work as a first responder, to work with the emergency services, and then have a duty of care of looking after the victims. So you might see on television whenever there's a flooding somewhere in the UK, so like leisure centres are opened up and care is provided to the victims of the flooding by the local authority. So my understanding is that ultimately the duty of care resides with Tower Hamlets Council. Andrew, is that correct? And what are your views? And I know you've made comments on this issue.
Yes, so I know the Civil Contingency Unit was there last Friday. But as I said, in this particular case, because the two hotels were so close by, I'm not sure they really needed to activate anything else. And I think we were also lucky that this happened, on 9 o'clock on a Friday morning when the weather was good. If it'd been in the middle of the winter with heavy rain, we might have needed to do something else. So I think we were lucky in that respect. But residents are still, suffering because basically they're stuck in hotel rooms. They're not allowed to use the communal facilities of the hotel, so they literally are stuck in their rooms. And I've seen some very interesting sort of stories on Twitter today, or heard from residents that, again, as Harry was saying earlier, sort of a lack of communication. There was meant to be a public meeting with Ballymore on Wednesday. That was cancelled Wednesday morning. Tomorrow morning, there's a briefing from the London Fire Brigade for residents, but now that's only for residents of Block D, which is the one immediately caught by the fire, but not other residents in this of the immediate neighbourhood. So in this area, you probably have about over 1,000 apartments, all Ballymore built, all Ballymore maintained, all Ballymore looked after, and you've got residents in the neighbouring blocks who are thinking, what's going on? And they're getting their information from social media, and there is some Ballymore communication as well, but they're not getting it from the council or from the London Fire Brigade, at least not yet. Maybe in the coming weeks they will get that. So I think, and that was also another lesson from the Samuel Garside fire, Barking and Dagenham, was communications were a bit of a mess. And I think we're seeing the same thing again in Tower Hamlets.
You made a comment about the council tax, etc. Do you want to explain that? And is that moving forward? Has the administration picked up your comments, so to speak?
Yeah, so I just thinking about it because I sort of found out that obviously residents are going to be away from their homes for 3 to 6 months. So I was thinking, well, that must mean I don't have to pay council tax, because if you're in a hotel, the hotel is paying business rates, so the council, is still getting paid. So I just asked the question that this morning, and I just put it on social media. But a resident had actually come back and said actually they thought of this question already yesterday and had asked the council, and the council had already said yes yesterday that they would do this. If they were given a list of the apartments that are affected by the fire, that they would sort of give a council tax, or basically cease any invoicing for council tax from the fire from last Friday until they reoccupy their home. So at least there's a little bit of financial help there.
Just listening, just observing what's happened at Providence Wharf, just picking up on the comment made by Harry, there does seems to be a lot of moving parts in this and people falling in between. Are there any proposed solutions to this? For example, just putting it out there, like local authorities taking over the freehold sort of like responsibilities of developers, so to speak, etc.
Well, there has been some push for it. Oh yeah, so the Housing Select Committee in Parliament have done like 2 reports on this now, and actually Bob Blackman, the Conservative MP, I think it's Harrow West, Harrow East, he's basically proposed actually if these freeholders don't remediate and actually pay for it, especially where the freeholder is the original developer and was the guy that built it, then they should have the freeholds confiscated. Basically, the state does a compulsory purchase order or something, and then basically remediates the buildings, and then basically gives it back to the leaseholders, and they become common holders. But the thing is that what that needs to happen is there needs to be more government funding. So there's about £5 million now, and there's some estimates, the Conservative estimate is £15 million to make these apartment buildings safe, but some people are going up to 50 billion, and MHCLG have sent out a series of frenzied tweets since the protest, and then there's been one today saying they don't agree with the number. But the problem is, 4 years after Grenfell, they have not done a comprehensive audit. So they've not done the Australian model where they went round and they did a risk-based model. Basically, what's happened is that because of Grenfell and the media stuff, there's been knee-jerk government guidance, which basically has turned all these apartment buildings unsafe. Even ones that are safe, they become unsafe because they need to be basically valued and all the rest of it. And the problem is that you could have a building like our one where we had a very slither of Grenfell and FDM cladding on our roof, but somehow that needs to be removed. But it's not being seen as something like asbestos where you have to manage it, because now people are going to be potentially bankrupted because of this cladding. And anything under 18 meters is also seen as dangerous, basically, as over 18 meters. So they're going to be given false loans, which could even be 100 years long, which is crazy. No one will buy those flats.
Andrew, do you want to come in on this?
I think that maybe the most important lesson of last week, and again, we were very fortunate nobody died. I think it had been 3 o'clock in the morning and higher up the building, there would have been fatalities, is the government are very much focused on ACM cladding in tall buildings. And it appears that this fire did not involve any ACM cladding. It involved maybe other issues and other cladding, but also the internal failures of the smoke detectors work. And the government focus, I think, has been on the wrong area. It should have been on wider fire safety, which includes maintenance issues, rather than pretending that ACM is the only problem out there. And once ACM is fixed, it's like job done, everything else is safe. And that's clearly not the case at New Providence Wharf.
Well, it seems like this is an issue that's going to rumble on, especially with the amount of development that's being proposed in Tower Hamlets and London. And we do have a housing crisis, so dense housing developments are being seen as part of the solution to that. But it seems like it's going to carry on. It'd be interesting to see what lessons are learned from the Overview and Scrutiny Housing Committee. and what we can do to implement. And feel free to join us again, Harry, with an update with regards to your campaign, etc. So and I just want to say thanks for coming. If people want to find more information, Harry, where can they go to get more information?
So they can go on Twitter or Facebook. So you can go on Twitter or Facebook, Tower Hamlets Justice for Leaseholders, but also check out the charity Leasehold Knowledge Partnership, and also End Our Cladding Scandal, and also UK Cladding Groups. All of these groups and LKP, where I work my day job, they're all doing great work. They're trying to get the policies changed on this.
No problem. So with these videos do go out on social media, and with videos we'll put the links to that for people for further information. But thanks, Harry, for joining us. So we're going to go straight into